John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thank you for joining us for Newsmaker. I'm Ellen McNamara, filling in for John Hook this weekend. Newly appointed Maricopa County Sheriff Russ Skinner is here. And then later on in the program, we have covered the sober living scandal extensively, and it is estimated to have cost Arizona taxpayers $2 billion. A woman who's an advocate for victims of fraudulent sober living homes is here. We'll have that interview in a bit. But first, on Newsmaker, Maricopa County Sheriff Russ Skinner is here. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go over the timeline just for folks that don't know. But Paul Penzone, we know that he resigned last year. You applied. You were appointed by the Board of Supervisors in February. You will finish out his term.
That is correct.
But now you're also running too, right? And the primary is coming up.
Yes, it is. Awful quickly.
I was going to say, you got a lot going on.
Yes, short window of time.
Because not only are you running the department, but you're also running now for political office.
That's correct.
But you haven't really, you've always said that you don't feel like this is a political position, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, law enforcement itself should not be driven by any politics. You know, we're public safety individuals, and we cannot let that interfere or bias our decisions and our actions being a law enforcement agency. And I've been ingrained in that, being in the sheriff's office for over 33 years at this point, and learned that long ago that it will not play a role in my effective leadership with the organization, my decision-making with the organization, and the delivery and services to our community members.
Why did you become a law enforcement officer? Why was that something that you wanted to pursue? You
know, I'm second generation. My father was in law enforcement growing up. He worked actually for the sheriff's office for almost 27 years. And it was something that I enjoyed, connecting with the community, looked at the benefits relative to public service. And secondly, just once I got into it, realized how much you know, just inner strength you get being a law enforcement officer, the impact that you make in the community, and thought I'd be one that may be a difference maker, you know, communication-wise, understanding and helping the public in their needs for service. And not a lot of people, you know, raising the right hand to do the job. It's been very rewarding for me, and I look forward to continuing to serve, especially at this role now.
Yeah. And you were chief deputy under Penzone. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, very quickly, when the sheriff was appointed in his first term, he brought me up to executive command, and I served in a couple roles that first year over patrol, our enforcement operations, and then went over back to our compliance area where I was an executive chief, overseeing the court order, overseeing our professional standards bureau, our Bureau of Internal Oversight. And after his first year in office, he had a vacancy come up with the chief deputy position and appointed me to that role that second year, and I've been there ever since.
Yeah, and so when he resigned, you essentially kind of wanted to help stabilize the department. Is that right? Because there were some people who had applied that, you know, didn't have MCSO experience.
Right, and I think if you look at deputy sheriffs, they never look at being a sheriff, because that is either political appointment or you have to run for candidacy and be elected to that position. Where it's different, I think, in some municipal areas where you can always be a police chief at some point in your career, because you know the process. You don't have to run for election. So it's not something that you look at that's in your cards necessarily as a sheriff's office employee. When I heard, number one, that the sheriff was not going to run again, but secondly, that he was leaving in January, and I saw, you know, just the uncertainty and the look in some of the employees' eyes. These are their careers and what their future is. Who's going to come in office? What's the direction going to be? Potentially for only 9 months at that point, and then potentially another leadership change. So quickly, I grabbed onto the fact that I wanted to bring a sense of calmness, a sense of direction that was at least comforting with the community and for the agency to move forward and bring down that uncertainty and keep continuity and unity, especially when we're going into an election cycle. And we've seen the last two cycles obviously be a little more interactive with the need for public safety and security, and wanted to assure the community that we would still be able to carry that out at least through November.
Yeah, that's a huge responsibility, is handling the elections. I mean, it is. It just is now. You did talk politically a little bit about, we know that you were a longtime Republican, you switched parties, but the two guys that you're running against, they did the same thing. Paul Penzone, longtime Republican, switched parties to become a Democrat. So I feel like that's, I don't know, it's kind of old news, frankly, right now.
Yeah, and for me, you know, I had a reason to do it, and the reason was, again, to be able to support the agency and the community, to keep everything moving forward. It wasn't to even have the intention to run for office at that point in time, and it aligned with, and I did it back in October, the day after Penzone announced that he was not going to run and leaving.
Speaking of Penzone, it's no secret he was extremely frustrated with the federal oversight. It was a court order, 2013. It was because of racial profiling, and it happened because of former Sheriff Joe Arpaio. There were immigration patrols and sweeps. Have you been frustrated at times with this federal oversight? Because I imagine that if you're working, in tandem with Paul Penzone, you're hearing that as well.
Yeah, I've been involved in the court order since its basically deliverance to the office since October of 2013. I've had a lot more time and experience in working with it and understanding it. It is a court order. The agency and the personnel are obligated to perform the reform required of that. So I don't know that a feeling gets attached with that, just knowing that we have a challenge to make sure that those things are done.
You have no choice.
No choice.
You have to abide by this,
You have to strike a balance between, what is required, and a lot of it was, necessary reform, modern day policing type activities. So we've been able to incorporate, I think, Sheriff Penzone wasn't, had a shorter time with it, hadn't been used to it. And again, everybody has a personal reaction to it to some degree, I suppose. But for me, it's been just keep the mission going, moving forward, keep working with the parties, keep working with the court and the monitor team, and helping the agency get through, get past the reform. But all these reforms are going to be embedded, it's already embedded in our policy, our training. It's not like even when the court order goes away, these are measures that will continue to be part of the process in law enforcement. We just need to look at how do we get past the point where there's oversight or needed oversight. And so I hope to work on doing that, at least at some portion of my career.
So just in the last couple of weeks, two big cases have kind of come up. We've covered them anyway in the media. One involves the Renner family and Talon Renner. So he's one of the kids, just for background, that is accused of killing Preston Lord, a high-profile case in the East Valley. And there was a situation involving the Renner family where a deputy was recorded driving a car to the Renner family. And so basically, it just looked like preferential treatment. And it's my understanding that two deputies were reassigned. Can you talk about that at all?
Just a little bit. Obviously, it's an open administrative investigation on those two deputies, so there's still investigation that needs to be done by the agency. But immediately when it came to my attention, I researched what was going on, where these decisions were made, what policy and procedure is relative to any type of escort. I think, based off of what I've seen, is that these deputies were requested to ensure that the family members and didn't know anything necessarily about which case they were associated with, to escort them in an employee entrance or exit. And that obviously is a secured area. And so we reassigned them pending the investigation, and we will hold them accountable if there was any policy or procedure that their misconduct that was done during this incident. But secondly, also look at that procedure. At this point, I immediately put out a directive that in any type of circumstance, I mean, at times there will be a high-profile case that out of the public safety reason of needing to maybe move people throughout the courthouse in different directions, but that has to be done with a supervisor's authorization, and it was not done in this case as far as I know.
Got it. Yeah, so there definitely has to be a conversation.
Absolutely.
First off.
Absolutely.
Also, too, so Lisa Mancuso, another story, just happened this week. She was a woman, she was running, and she was hit and killed by an alleged drunk driver. His name is Jacob Moore. And according to my sources, his father is a Phoenix police lieutenant. Are you able to talk about that at all?
I can just tell you that we've made an arrest in the investigation. Again, because somebody might be a family member, affiliated family member, it didn't have any play in the investigation. Our staff worked nonstop on it. Our vehicular crimes unit worked nonstop in processing that, the digital evidence, to make sure that we had a solid case for prosecution, not just for arrest. We see this in the media a lot, that something tragic happens. You want to make sure that you have enough evidence and you're doing a thorough job to get the prosecution in, not just get the arrest and then have that person maybe released back on the street or an unsuccessful investigation pan out. So we worked nonstop, and at the point we were able to get, they got a grand jury warrant, and we did, the suspect did turn himself in, and he has been booked into the ITR.
But his truck was registered to the family, and that's where this law enforcement
Yes, the truck was
That's
registered
how
to the
we
father.
knew.
I think a lot of times, I think even my adult kids, their vehicles may still be
Right.
registered to me, so we have to be, cognizant of that. But it did not play a role in the investigation. In fact, the suspect's family member did call us once it was discovered that that vehicle potentially was involved in that. It was very cooperative with it.
Okay. So where are you guys going now? I mean, I'm assuming that you have to, not only are you campaigning, but you're having to run a 3,000 person department, right? And recruitment too. I mean, you have a lot going on.
A lot of challenges out there. And, MCSO isn't unique. All law enforcement's dealing with challenges of recruitment, retention, trying to make sure that the public safety measure is out there, especially, again, during an election cycle. We continue to move the path. We're not going to sit idle. Going to continue to move forward. And a lot of progressive programs. A lot of it has to do with our health and wellness and our safety for our staff, but also for the community, looking at embodying more personnel for our co-responder program, making sure that we look at areas where we can improve recruitment, retention opportunities, whether that be through benefits, whether that be through compensation. I've actually had a lot of good conversations with the Board of Supervisors, county management, county leadership, and everybody's in the same direction. We're all fighting for employees. What's unique about Maricopa County is there's about 26 other agencies, so we're competing for a very small resource pool, and hopefully motivating community members to be part of the organization. Yeah, well, you guys do a great job, and we appreciate it. Sheriff Skinner, thank you so much for coming in, too. And we should mention, too, that Sheriff Skinner is running against retired Phoenix Police Lieutenant Tyler Camp on the Democrat side, as well as Jeffrey Kirkham, a former police chief in Apache Junction and Nogales. And there's a crowded field as well on the Republican side. Again, that is coming up on July 30th, the primary. Coming up here on Newsmaker, a woman who's an advocate for victims of fraudulent sober living homes is here. Welcome back to Newsmaker. We have covered the sober living scandal extensively here on Fox 10. And so far, it is estimated to have cost Arizona taxpayers $2 billion. It is unbelievable. Now, a woman who's an advocate for victims of fraudulent sober living homes is here to talk a little bit more about the work that she is doing. Her name is Reva Stewart, and you might have actually seen her on some of the stories that we've done here on Fox 10 with Justin Lum. Reva, thank you so much for coming in and all the work that you have been doing. Because of the work, by the way, that she has done, you were just named Arizona Woman of the Year, which is incredible.
Thank you.
But I know you're not doing this work because of the fact that you won an award or you're trying to get an award. You were doing the work and advocating for Indigenous people, right?
Correct. I never imagined, or never thought about looking towards an award for anything. I just wanted accountability for our Native relatives.
Yeah. So this, just for our folks at home, kind of a timeline. In 2022, earlier 2022, the summer of it, you noticed something was happening on the streets, and you call it white van syndrome, where vans were literally showing up on reservations and picking up Native people who needed to get clean, who needed treatment, but they weren't getting the treatment that they needed, and they were often disappearing. Is that right? Tell me about your personal story with your cousin.
Well, my cousin was brought down here prior to me telling, going on social media and letting everyone know what I experienced. Prior to that, I had seen so many vans on social media, everybody, on the reservation saying, watch your kids. And because I advocate for our Native people down here, I started seeing more vans down here, and I'm like, okay, I advocated for the MMIW, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, and so I would put out my flyers, and I noticed that more of our Native people were going missing. So when that happened, I just kept track of it, and then my family reached out to me from Bloomfield, New Mexico, to let me know that my cousin was missing, and to keep an eye out for her. They didn't know that she was going to be a part of this whole scheme, but she happened to get in a van, come down here, and because she didn't give up her personal information, they just let her go out on the streets. So we were able to get her home safe.
Wow.
And I tell her that all the time. Had it not been for you, I would have never figured out this puzzle on my own.
And then in November of 2022, you spoke before tribal leaders saying there's a much bigger issue going on. And when you said that, that she didn't give up her personal information, that is what was happening, is that folks were getting into these vans who needed treatment. They were given alcohol or drugs.
Correct.
They weren't getting sober. And then they were giving their information, and then access was being billed, right?
Yes, yes, that's exactly what was happening. We put together a timeline of how long they were, how long they were missing, where they were missing from. I had tons of families who reached out to me because once I had put out on social media, this is what happened to my cousin. If you had experienced any of this, please reach out to me. And it snowballed from there. I did go to an ad hoc meeting, and I also watched on social media an ad hoc meeting, which is health committee, a meeting with the health committee on the native lands. So I had seen France Beasley, who is an advocate for our native people too, and he had went up to an ad hoc meeting up in Chinle, I believe. So we reached out to each other and we figured, this is what's going on. And so I just kept it out there, and more people just kept reaching out to me.
Right.
So when you continue to keep it out there and you don't stop, you just keep going, it just, and I write everything down. I write everything down. And I went to this ad hoc meeting, and then I went before legislation. Anybody that would listen to me.
Yeah. And you'd also record videos too,
yes,
of what
yes.
you were encountering on the streets, and that really helped. And it was kind of, you were hearing the same story, is that someone, was brought in by a recruiter, put in a van, ended up at some sober living house that was unlicensed. They gave up their information and they weren't getting sober. And people as far as Minnesota, Alaska, New Mexico, that were ending up here in the valley. And,
yes.
Right?
Yes, we had quite a few of them from Montana. And when we had our first person from Montana that we had to go look for, we were out, I think it was like 115 degrees. Oh. And it was midsummer, so we were out there looking for him. We found him, but it took us about 5-6 hours to find him. Mm-hmm. We were able to get him home that weekend, but it started to escalate from there, from other people, other tribes reaching out to us. Mm-hmm. I'm missing so-and-so from this tribe. And so to date, we've gotten probably over 1,000 people home.
Wow.
Yeah, if not more.
And you're buying bus tickets to get people back home, plane tickets to get people back home, and then to regroup, right? And actually try to seek treatment from a valid place.
Yeah, and they say these places are sober living homes, but let's call it like it is. They're flop homes.
Yeah.
They took a lot of our native relatives into these homes. We've had a lot of deaths in these homes because they allowed them to drink. Our native relatives, if they came down with an addiction problem to alcohol, they are now going home with a new addiction to fentanyl. Oh. So it's nonstop because they were allowed. I've heard so many stories. I've spoke to so many of our native relatives that told me that they were given alcohol in the morning, afternoon, evening, just so they could come back to these homes.
Wow. And then the billing would continue.
And the billing would continue.
Yeah. And so now, Attorney General Chris Mays has gotten kind of a handle of it. She's kind of tackling this. We have a new director of access, a new administration. A number of these homes have been shut down, around 300. Is that right? Do you know of maybe
more? More have gotten shut down, yeah, but it hasn't been posted on their website. But yeah, we've heard of more getting shut down.
But then that creates another problem. I mean, yes, you're trying to clean this up, but at the same time, if 300 homes are shut down, that means people who are in these places they're kicked out.
A lot of the ones that were shut down were the intensive outpatient programs that paid these houses.
Okay.
So when they become on that, they are on that list, it does create a huge problem because now these houses can't afford to keep them. So they are what we called it, dumping our relatives out on the streets.
And so that's what you're seeing now?
Yes, more so today.
And I'm sure it's, I mean, again, you're doing the work. You're out there at night, you're out there during the day, and it's kind of the same thing. I mean, these folks need help.
Yes, and we've reached out to all the tribes. You know, they had created 211 Option 7. A lot of our Native relatives took advantage of that at the beginning because they thought, well, that's where we need to go, without realizing that you use that once, you can't use it again. So now they're without, and then they go to another home, and we call it house jumping as well. So once they're all out of, you know, places to go, because a lot of these places shut down, they're now on the streets.
Right. And if they've come in from far away, they have no idea what to do.
They tend to stay in the places that they were brought down to, because if you're coming from a reservation and you're coming to the city thinking you're going to get help, and you're no longer getting help, you have a new addiction and your alcohol usage is more, you're going to stay in the area that you know, because that's the only place that, you know, they brought you down to. And there's so many here in the valley.
It's a form of trafficking.
Yes,
absolutely.
Very much so.
Absolutely. And clearly word had gotten out that this was the place to come to commit fraud, right?
Yes, yes. And it's been huge. It's still happening to this day. It's still happening. We still have more people that are missing. We're still having families reach out to us because they don't know where their family member is. So.
And your group is Stolen People, Stolen Benefits.
Correct. It started off with 4 of us. It's myself, Jerry Long, Raquel Moody, and Jared Marquez. And now we have Tara and a few others that, you know, come help us do outreach. So we go nonstop, you know, even today, just going nonstop, making sure we get the reports in, because we report all the time.
And you sometimes see folks when you do have an encounter with someone out on the street, you can see them multiple times.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And yeah.
Yes, and when they're missing, if you have someone that's missing, they tend to know each other out on the street. And so we always ask, you know, can you, if there's somebody missing from a family member that's missing, we'll ask them, you know, give us pictures, give us a name. Do they have a nickname? Where's the last place you saw them? How long ago was it? Because a lot of our relatives that are on the streets will know where they're at when they were last seen.
How can we make this better? Is it having the care, the necessary care that is accessible on the reservations? Would that help? What do you think could help get the treatment to people that
if we had more treatment centers on the reservations? I know that Gila River has set up multiple places so they can get help for their tribes. So I think if, you know, we have 22 tribes here, but it's not just our tribes here in the valley or around Arizona, it's also the rest of the states. Yeah. So if everybody, you know, stepped on board and got, you know, centers there to help, not sober living centers, but
yes,
actual facilities that will help them.
Right. Tell me about the town hall that is coming up.
Well, we are having a town hall meeting on March 26th, on Tuesday, from 6 to 8. We have invited.
And where is that?
This will be at 300 East Indian School Road. Okay. We're sponsoring it. It's Stolen People, Stolen Benefits. Again, we're asking for relatives that have been affected by this, families that have been affected by this, families who had deaths that have been affected by this, even legitimate facilities. You know, a lot of these facilities that are legitimate, they have to be JACO certified, CARF certified, in order to run, but a lot of them are getting shut down because they utilize the American Indian Health Plan.
Got it.
So,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Reva.
Thank you.
Again, and if you want to watch any of our previous investigations, we do have them, by the way, at fox10phoenix.com. Thanks again, Reva, for the work that you're doing, too, and congratulations, Arizona Woman of the Year with the USA Today.
Yeah, and I give props to Fox 10 and Justin Loom, too.
Yeah. Justin is a fabulous investigator. Thanks so much. Thanks, Reva. and we'll be right back.